On today's special bearish episode of the Rebel's Edge, Trump's tough tariffs trounce global markets. How low can we go? And of course, it's the tech sector taking it on the chin the worst. We'll tell you what's happening with Amazon, Apple, and our favorite Nvidia. And then finally, if that wasn't bad enough, OPEC decides to pile on and release the hounds, or the hounds of oil, promising to expand production from OPEC members, driving oil prices to the downside, along with everything else except maybe gold. All of that and more on today's Rebel's Edge.
Welcome to the Rebel's Edge, and I got a feisty dude with me today here. You know, it's not John Najarian. We got Mark Lopresti, one of the greatest, our CEO, our leader. He does all the work that John and I probably could never do, but we really appreciate it. And John is, whereabouts unknown. As we know, John tends to be that way. But Mark, you're not just a fill-in, you're the man. So we're really looking forward to today's show.
I appreciate that, Pete. And yeah, today's definitely an interesting one. John's on a plane to Chicago as we speak. We just spent a couple of days speaking at the Uncorrelated event in Puerto Rico. Then we came here in Miami right now, covering this remarkably bearish day. But yeah, we got a lot to cover, so let's get at it.
Let's get after it. I was on last night with News Nation, and I can tell you this. I was on just after the president was up there and gave us all the numbers. And was it big? Hell yes, it was big. Was it global tariffs? Hell yes, it was global tariffs, and it was covering the globe. I mean, it wasn't no rock was not turned over and looked at and everything else, Mark. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And the markets almost immediately, basically jumped on it and said, we don't really like this. What do you got for the macro minute? I assume it's something pretty similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, listen, the question on everybody's mind here is, right, is this a buy the news moment? And when is that moment going to come if it is? Markets like certainty, they hate uncertainty. Well, we got that certainty. It was just perhaps a little more certain maybe than some of the more conservative talking heads were hoping in terms of the levels of these tariffs. But Pete, at every indicator that we're looking at, including with our friend Jeff Garbaz from the Rebel Squeeze Play and stuff, this thing is starting to look like a spring that's been coiled and compressed so much to the downside that the bottom has got to be in the offing. It's just a question when, and that's, of course, why we like to play the game with options, because it gives us more time to be right. And we may have put some trades on in the past couple of days thinking that we might be turning the corner here, as painful as it feels today.
Yep, no doubt about it. And there are opportunities that are going to be incredible. It's just a matter of being focused and being on top of it. Speaking of which, how about the fantastic futures? Looking out into the future, how about the VIX? I talk about it every day, but Mark, I mean, the reality is it's only up 44% in the last 5 trading sessions. We actually got right up against the most recent highs, over 29 on the VIX today. So, of course, it's a wild ride. And by the way, we've had multiple days where we have had huge swings, 800-point swings in the Dow. So, down 450, up 400, all the rest of it, and some of these big moves that we've seen in the NASDAQ as well. That's just the markets that we are in right now. Last I looked, we're still trading around 26 on the VIX. I wouldn't be surprised to see it spike up and test again, but you know what? It's going to be a wild ride either way, because volatility is in this market, and we should know that. People should have known that based on a lot of the stuff that you and I and John have been talking about. And oh, by the way, including yesterday, the VIX trades that were out there, buying 20,000, selling 80,000 against it. I mean, there's been some huge option paper in the volatility index.
Yeah, and when we covered that, we covered what we knew, at least up to that point, at our great RebelCon event in Las Vegas 2 Saturdays ago, talking about that exact thing, the trajectory of the VIX. Here's the part that I don't understand, Pete. Is this really news? I mean, okay, yeah, maybe it was a little more harsh than people were hoping, 50% or more, some countries, blah, blah, blah. But this really wasn't news. Like, I don't necessarily agree that we should have this kind of an overt and vehemently visceral reaction to, Snake, why'd you bite me? Trump's being Trump. Trump told us he was going to be Trump. He said April 2nd is coming. He said that there was going to be reciprocal tariffs. So that's also why I just wonder if this isn't a pretty significant overreaction, but we shall see. Let's get into
Yeah.
some tickers.
Yeah, I think the global side of it is really what caught people a little off. They were hoping it was more targeted. They were hoping for 5, 6 countries. That's it. Let's go. But that's not what it was. And I think that's the big
No.
part of that. Restoration Hardware. How about this one? You want to get kicked in the teeth, just be Restoration Hardware. Not only did they miss in Q4, but they missed in some pretty big ways. However, it's interesting, Mark. I'm looking at it and it's like, I always like to look at, well, what really happened? I really don't care where some of these analysts were looking. I want to know what happened. Well, when you look at it, revenue was actually up 18% for Restoration Hardware, 18%. Now they missed, but they had a pretty nice lift off of that. I also look at the earnings themselves, $1.58. They were actually looking for 191. That's a miss. That's an ugly miss. And that's, I think, what people were looking at. On top of the fact that we say it every time somebody has earnings, what's the guidance? What are you looking for? Their guidance was awful. They talked about this being one of the worst years for them in 50 years of real estate. That's a big issue as well. I tell you what, here's one thing that people should have known going into this. We're in a market that's a little jittery anyway, right? I mean, clearly. I mean, the moves we've had is incredible. Well, when I look at the PE of Restoration Hardware, and I'm not looking at the forward, I'm looking at what their PE coming in trailing was. It's anywhere between 50 and 60, something like that, Mark. I mean, that's awfully high. And I think people should have known that going in, and the fact that they got some cuts in the price target cut from Citi. There's just a heck of a lot of news out there, and none of it is good.
No, I mean, and look, if you're looking for a reason why this thing's getting slammed as hard as it is on what is actually not the worst guidance. If a CEO told me, hey, we're going to grow revenue this year by 13%, I wouldn't exactly make that a reason to take him out, but, back of the barn and shoot him. That's revenue growth. It's not the worst thing in the world. But when you've got a PE that makes this thing look like it's trading like a data center or a quantum computing company, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit there, it does make sense that it's going to get sold off that much, and citing, of course, the worst, forget tariffs, I think the bigger issue here, worst housing market in years. Companies like this rely on two things: new homes and even existing home turnover. That's when you buy furniture. If nothing's moving around, then they ain't selling.
Yep, that is a problem. All right, how about Amazon? We should group that into, okay, you got your Mag 7 out there. You know what? If you're in the Mag 7, you're going to get hit and you're going to get slapped around, and that's exactly what's going on with Amazon. The really only big news, other than the fact of all of these tariffs, was RBC said, you know what? We're getting a little bit queasy about where our price target is. So they brought it down to 260, from 260 to 235. So I look at that and I'm going, well, today we're sitting at 180. So there is plenty of room to the upside. We don't have to be in a hurry to jump into this one. I think it's interesting, Mark. I still view it more as what everybody should look at it as the IWS. I mean, that's what this is. And I think sometimes people look at it and they say, well, yeah, but they're one of the biggest exchanges that there is, the largest network, blah, blah, blah. That's true. But I think it's on the tech side that these guys really flourish, and anything tech, that's what's getting sold off today.
Yeah, as I teased in the cold open, and some other news in this name also not helping, mixing it up with the French regulators on how they're charging their delivery fees. Apparently, that's in violation of the Baguette Act of 1776. I made that up completely, but not additional good news for Amazon on a day that it's getting thrown out baby with the bathwater. And of course, unfortunately, the concentration of these big names in the indices, like the triple Qs that are getting sold off by those algos, not helping matters. Well, how about another big A, Pete? How about Apple?
Mm-hmm. When I look at Apple, Mark, one of the things that I like to do when I'm looking at these stocks, when we look at everything that we're way on top of it, and we just look at today, right? If I go back a year, the stock's still up 20%. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not off of the highs, because it certainly is. It's well off of the highs, but nonetheless, I'm looking at the stock, and from that perspective, I feel a little bit better about it. But You've got folks out there like Citi, they're nervous about the gross margins. Jeffrey is not very happy about the profits. So when you get that on top of what's going on because of the reaction, what's going on with all these tariffs, it makes it look a little bit uglier and a little bit uglier, but I think that's opportunity for Apple. I think this is one of those things where Apple and the fact that they're committed to put $500 billion into the US for more manufacturing, I think this is one of those companies that when you look for a discount, you're getting a discount, I think, on Apple. And I think it gives you a great opportunity here.
Yeah, I can't say that I disagree. And when we start to see things turn, and again, hoping that we are on the precipice of seeing things turn, because how low can we go? As I said in the cold open, this is definitely one of them that I would like to have in my portfolio. And yeah, I mean, look, they have particularly deep, as we know, exposure to China. A lot of the pre-tariff downward pressure on this name related to just how much the competition in China is eating into their market share. I don't think this tariff situation helps that for Apple, but yeah, it is starting to look a little bit cheaper. And hey, that moving some of their manufacturing and onshoring and bring things back here to the US, that is exactly what President Trump is trying to do with this tough tariff policy.
Right.
Pete, let's talk about our one of our AI darlings. You know it,
Yeah,
Nvidia.
Nvidia is just one of these really special companies, right? But let's be honest, Nvidia's had a little bit of an issue for a while now. It's made some nice moves to the upside, but it's been having some pressure on it for a while now. And I'm just looking at it, trading what 104, I think, is about where it was, which a year ago was $90. But this is also a stock that's been up there into the 140s and higher. So you look at this one, is it going to get caught up into this whole thing with the tariffs? Absolutely. Everybody's getting affected some way or another. And certainly, I think NVIDIA is one of them. Now, they've got some great things that are on the works with China and others as far as some of the sales that they're trying to do. Taiwan is going to be a bit of an issue now that we've got the tariffs that have gone all over the entire globe, as we were talking about at the very start. These are going to be tough things for NVIDIA to get through. And it doesn't take an overnight thing. I think it takes a much more time frame than that. But I think that the reality is this thing should come back, will come back. But for right now, with a lot of the uncertainty, the word of the day, of course, that's a real problem. We've got some certainty. We know exactly what the president did. But now the uncertainty is, how do we react from that, right? I mean, and how do these companies, especially these tech companies, how do they deal with all of these various tariffs that are going on? That's going to be a puzzle, and it's going to be a puzzle for a while.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Nvidia's problems pre-Trump tariffs were whether or not they've got the demand picture for their chips
Yeah.
properly projected, right? And of course, in the wake of the whole DeepSeek nonsense, caused into question whether there was already oversupply, oversaturation of AI chips and AI infrastructure in general, versus what the demand expectations were from companies like Nvidia. But at the same time, Pete, these guys are the best in the business and the only game in town at their level when it comes to delivering the chips. Their Blackwell AI, Blackwell chip. I think they've still got waiting lists for that. They announced, of course, a did a remarkable reversal of sentiment for Jensen Huang, who 2 developer days ago said, quantum's a bunch of hooey and we're not going to see it for 10 to 30 years. And then 2 weeks ago at the most recent developer day goes, hey, guess what? We got a quantum chip coming out. And I kind of went, Jensen, give me a break, man. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this one plays out. Still my favorite in the chip maker space, and might be looking to see if it starts to get a little bit more reasonably priced. I mean, this is what's getting sold. It's risk assets, it's tech, Nvidia being one of them. Again, large components of those ETF funds, of course, that get sold off somewhat indiscriminately in a situation like this. So keeping a close eye and keeping a close eye on the performance of each of these individual names, because my suspicion, Pete, is we will start to see the turn in a ticker by ticker basis before we see it in a broader market and start to see the NASDAQ move in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So sports today might be a welcome respite from the markets that are leaving no rest for the wicked, of course. And Pete, I know today we want to talk about Iowa and the 2025 draft and what 5 sleepers are out there that you think could make it
Yeah.
in this
Well,
upcoming season.
And as you said, Mark, I mean, we got to have a little bit of fun, right? I mean, we've got all this stress because of these markets, and sometimes you just have to sit back and relax a little bit and take a look and take your eye off your screen and the financials a little bit and maybe go to the sports a little. Maybe you switch over to
Hmm.
ESPN or whatever you might do. But I wanted to highlight something for you, and I love that you're on, not John, today, because I think this speaks to you. Honestly, I'm looking at Iowa State, actually, not Iowa. Those two cities are not very happy about you saying that. So this is Iowa State. And Iowa State, here, how about this? First of all, nobody knows anything about Iowa State other than it's somewhere in the state of Iowa. But outside of that, they don't know. Let me tell you, great football program. I think one of the best coaches in all of college football, quite frankly. And what makes this interesting is they've got players nobody knows. Everybody knows the guys. If they watch even just a little college football, you know a lot of these players at Alabama, and Georgia, and maybe a USC or Oregon or Michigan or Ohio State or Notre Dame. But when it comes to schools like Iowa State, people really don't know these guys. They got 5 guys that I picked out from that one school that I think will be the guys that a year from now, 2 years from now, people are going to go, hey, where did Jaden Higgins come from? This wide receiver, he's 6'5", weighs 215 pounds,
Jeez.
a 4.47 40, and has a 39-inch vertical all at the combine. This kid's going to go really high in the draft. So that's one. How about this, Mark? When you've got big receivers, what do you need? You need big cornerbacks. Well, they've got a kid named Darian Porter. He's 6'4", 195 pounds. He runs the 40. It's only in a 4.30 40 time, and an 11-foot broad jump. And what that means is he's explosive. That's why they do it. They want to see the broad jump because how explosive is this guy when it comes to just being planted and then having to move? So I see that guy as well. Another receiver, they got this kid, Noel, who's 5'11", 195 pounds. So he's your small guy, but he runs a 4.3 40 as well. You've got an offensive tackle that transferred from Princeton. And the reason he should have stayed there, by the way, because they'll find you. If you're good enough, they don't care where you are. You could be at some small Division III school, they'll find you. But this guy's at Princeton. Now he's not going to get the Princeton on when he graduates, right? That's a problem. He'll get Iowa State, which is okay, but it ain't Princeton. But he's only 6'7", 340 pounds. He's a kid from Minneapolis, actually, that went to Princeton, came back to Iowa State. And I think he did that because he wanted to be somewhere where he'd get looked at a little bit more. He will, because he's a road grader, as they call him. And then they've got a safety, 6'5", 220-pound kid, runs a 4.5 40, who's going to be a safety from Iowa State in the NFL. Big guys like that are really rare. When you've got speed and you've got that kind of size and you're in the secondary, those taller, lanky guys are critical because these wide receivers, they're either little squirts or they're really big guys. And then you've got the tight ends. Well, this guy's going to line up on a tight end on one play and he's going to be on a wide receiver on the next play. These guys are all going to be names that we're all going to go, God, now did that guy play at Miami or Georgia or where was it? He's from Iowa State. What the hell? So that's the fun, I think, of football this time of year is you start finding these players that nobody really knows much about, but they will, by this time next year, they'll be talked about a lot.
And I'm sure your predictions will be correct. And of course, what's enabling all of that hopping around so we don't remember where and who they play for? It's the portal, baby. We talk about it all the time. Well, Pete, the boys of summer are back, opening days in different major cities. Last year, we talked a lot about our friends, the Cincinnati Reds, and Mr.
Yeah.
De La Cruz and what he was going to bring. What about Ohtani? He was a
Yeah.
phenom last season. Is there anybody that can touch this guy in this current season?
It's a great question. And the answer is no. The answer is no, because I look at this guy now. He's been in Major League Baseball for a longer period of time than we all even kind of remember, right?
Yeah.
Because early on, he was great, but he was kind of tucked away. Now that he's with the Dodgers for year 2, I'll tell you this, Mark. I would say this. If you're in a city that has a baseball team and the Dodgers come into town, please listen to me when I say go watch this guy play, because there is nobody else like him. I know he's not pitching anymore, at least for now, still, but nonetheless, he's a designated hitter that's absolutely flawless in just about every way. By the way, he hit the game-winning home run just last night, just to make it all just that much more easier to button up. But he's batting .333. He's got 3 home runs already. He's got 3 RBIs already. He's got 7 walks, right? This legendary guy in 8 years has hit 228 home runs. That's a real number, man. I mean, you start doing that, and if he can stay healthy, and he's 6'4", 230-pound guy, he's not a little guy at all. I'll tell you what, Mark, 570 RBIs. He's got every number that you'd want, and the guy shows up and plays every single day for the Dodgers. He's not one of those guys. Yes, he's had injuries here and there that have kept him out, but other than that, he wants to play, and he's getting paid a hell of a lot of money to play, and people pay a lot for their tickets. That's a ticket worth buying. So when you go to your Mets game or your Yankee game, I don't know which one you are, but you got to go if the Dodgers are in town, because this guy, it's like getting a chance to see, any of the legends of the past, but this guy's in the present. What a great opportunity, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, Pete, I was a bit of a Dodgers fan for a while when I used to have my office out in LA. I had some really good seats at Dodger Stadium. Fun game. And this guy is going to continue to wow the fans, even in the face of the Yankees' newfangled bat technology, which, of course, has been the talk of baseball fans everywhere. Well,
By the
Pete,
way, a
yes,
real
sir.
quickie for you. You never did a Larry David where you picked up a lady of the night just so you could go to the game, did you? I don't know if you remember that one, but that is unbelievably funny.
Yeah, I not only do I remember that one, but I have sat in that 405 traffic on the way to Dodger Stadium, and I think that many Los Angelinos, actually,
Wow.
have considered that minor felony in the past as a means of getting to the game more efficiently. I never, for the record, I never did that. Well, Pete, we're going to end it on that note of hookers in Los Angeles anecdotes, but hopefully that will give viewers a much needed belly laugh in an otherwise turbulent day. Tomorrow, of course, is Friday. There will be no Rebel's Edge. We will have our cocktail hour. Rebel's Edge will be back on Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, as it is every single Monday. That's not a national holiday. Pete, great to be on with you. It's absolutely always a pleasure. I'm going to be on New York One Spectrum News at 4 o'clock today, Eastern Time, with my friend Annika Pergament, covering Trump's tough tariff totality for that network. Looking forward to that. Congratulations again to our friends at Newsmax on their IPO. And Pete, I look forward to being back on the Rebel's Edge with you just as soon as we can.
That was great. Thanks.